What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So any day now we're going to hit our 5,500 subscriber mark, which means we're giving away a case of Arcasia's Island. I had someone ask about splitting it up into 4 separate winners, and I guess the reason we did it this way is because I've done a lot of giveaways on the channel for playmats, for cards, for play sets of staple cards, things like that. I've done a box before. I wanted to do a truly massive, big, awesome, cool giveaway for somebody, and maybe in the future we do that. We do like a handful of box giveaways, and I'm okay with that too. So maybe that'll be the next one we plan, but I've been advertising it this way for the last couple months. I want to stick to it, but definitely maybe we can do that in the future, like do a 4-box giveaway to 4 different winners. That would be cool with me. If it's cool with you guys, let me know down below. Anyway, the feedback was also really great from you guys in how we did the Mushu profile, if you will. So we're going to run with it. I don't mind doing it this way at all. And today we have Purple Steel, as I call it. It's ghostly good. This deck is actually, in my opinion, a tier 1 deck. I think that it can compete with the best decks of the format. And I think it has a pretty decent card pool to do all kinds of different things. It's also, one of the best things about it, a very budget-friendly deck and color combination to build with. So first and foremost, we're going to go over some of the tech cards, the choices, and then we will go into my overall deck list. Again, the tech cards are just cards that are not in my deck list, so maybe that'll narrow it down for you as we go. A huge thing to mention in this color combination, like some others, is there's very different ways you can play the deck. Are we playing a mid-game, not necessarily control, but like a mid-game style deck, or you can play very aggressively with this deck? Like you have your Maleficents, you have White Roses, Goats, you have so many different cards that can just get you a lot of lore quickly, and you can play a very fast-paced deck. And do you do somewhere in between hyper aggro and mid-game, like a mid-grow style deck where you're trying to win on like turn 6, 7, 8 possibly, as opposed to winning on turn 4 or 5? But you still can win very quickly, but you're also not trying to get into those turns 8, 9, 10 very often, ideally like turn 6 or 7. So there's a lot of variance in the way you can play this color combination. And some of the 1-drops that we considered but ultimately did not make the cut are Maleficent. Again, I'm not playing like the hyper aggro version. If you are, I think she's an auto include. However, we're not, so then I don't think you should play her. Olaf. I really like Olaf if you're in a slightly slower build, kind of like Maleficent is for this end of the spectrum where you're playing hyper aggro. If you're playing like a full-on slower, big tink, a mid-grow type, or sorry, mid-game to control style, I like Olaf over here because Olaf with like Crab is just insane, having the 3 willpower, surviving multiple challenges, being able to just get crazy value out of your Olaf. Then you have Pascal. Pascal kind of falls into the middle group a little bit, where you can use it to repeatedly get some lore, and a lot of the time it has evasive, and it can also deal with evasive threats because Crab can boost him. So like you slap a Crab down, now he gets evasive and 4 strength. That can take out a Genie and trade with it, so that's a pretty good trade-off. I think Pascal is a pretty slept-on card still, and being said, he did not make it into my final deck list. Pinocchio Talkative Puppet is a card that I tested out and I have played in some of my Amethyst decks this format, and I still debate if I want to play it in this deck. Ultimately, it's uninkable, and I felt like other cards had bigger impact, so I didn't. But being able to play it to force exert your opponent's cards is very strong, especially if you're in like a heavy Oswald item local or format, things like that. Like Oswald, the advantage it gets is just absolutely insane. Every time they ink, they get to look, is it an item, and play it for free. So being able to play a Pinocchio to exert their Oswald so you can challenge and take care of it right away is very strong. If you're in a heavy Oswald item meta, I would absolutely put Pinocchio in, probably as a 2 of in your deck. I'd find room for it, even if it means taking something like Calhoun down to 2 or 3 or even out completely if you have to. I think the deck can work without her. I would probably play it as like a more, not quite hyper aggro, but a more aggressive version, and put that Pinocchio in, because then you're less worrying about the challenging anyway. We have Doc. A little hint, if you look at the 1-drops, you probably know which ones we're playing. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise neither. We got Doc in here. Doc it's a card draw. I've been actually critical of the card. Not saying it's a bad card. I'm just not a huge fan of the card. And a huge reason for that, me personally, is I will play it at like 2 or 3 of. Usually, not often do I play it as a 4 of, because you don't really want to see it early. You want to see it when your hand is pretty much gone. And I think Amethyst does pretty well keeping hand size up without it. And in addition to that, it's like I never see it, or I see all 2 or 3 copies of it early in the game. And I know that statistically isn't something you should base it off of, but it doesn't matter what deck I'm playing it in. It doesn't matter what combination. It doesn't matter. It just seems to be glued to me like that, whether it's in real life or online too, like the algorithm or the shuffling. It seems to not matter. And that's just a bit of variance that I don't like to have in the deck, where it's just so bad early on. And that's why Doc is often one of the first cards I remove. If you're playing like a steel deck and you're starving for card draw, absolutely Doc is insane. I just think with Amethyst, I don't think Doc is truly needed. So White Rose, a lot of people are playing this card, and I get it, because it's just that guaranteed lore. They can't do anything about it. You play it, and potentially you can even play it, bounce it, play it again, get 2 lore that way. Goat does the same thing. So essentially you're playing, like, we'll call it 4 goats and then 4 half goats, because, you know, you don't get the lore when it leaves the field. It is still a 3/3 body. It is still inkable. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing White Rose. I just had cards that were more impactful to me, that gaining that instantaneous lore, just it wasn't as needed as I felt. Every card on this list, Queen's probably the first one I'd put into the deck. I really like Queen right now. I think she's an incredible counter to those item decks. And if you're playing against a deck where they have a princess, potentially just being able to get that 4 lore. She does have to exert, so that means you essentially have to wait a turn. You play her, she survives the turn. But then if you can just start emptying their discard from items and just controlling them that way, she actually puts in a ton of work. And I really like Queen right now. And I think she is super incredibly strong. And if I were to take anything out of the deck, she'd probably be the first card that I would put into it. Gantu. I like him, kind of like we said with the Mushu deck. I don't like him enough to getting him into the deck. And he's in such a weird spot. If we're in a format where like B prep is much more dominant, prominent, like if we were in a Popsicle Ruby Amethyst type meta, I think he would have a lot more value. So absolutely hold on to him. If you're into foiling your deck, I'll get your foils while he's on the cheaper end. Actually, don't get them right now. Big box stores release tomorrow, and give it like a week. They'll come down a little bit, and then grab them and scoop them up. But I just think this format, Gantu's not insane. But once we're in a format where, like, especially B prep is just everywhere, I think Gantu's going to be just insane. Belle actually came out of the deck. I think she's more kind of like with Olaf for the slower version of the deck, and that type build. I think that she's still a good card, just right now isn't the best in the format. Kind of the same with Elsa. Elsa's also really good if you're into like a very aggressive format, being able to exert your opponent's cards. And again, she does work good for that Oswald, but by that time in the game too, you're falling behind. Is taking Oswald not going to matter that much? I don't truly think it would. I think Queen would be better from turn 5 onward against the blue item deck, but she is still an option and does put in work. Saw Bagheera in a few topping lists too. The just damage effect is crazy strong, and it's when he's banished. It's not like when he's banished in a challenge, so that works out really nice. Being the bodyguard too, and questing for 2 does put that pressure on your opponent that they have to deal with it. So I do like Bagheera. Just once again, like a lot of cards on here, we play 60 because we want the consistency and to see our power cards as soon as possible. So we have to naturally cut cards out. And Bagheera is one of those cards that is incredibly strong, but at the end of the day is just barely missing the cut, kind of like the Queen. Gantu pretty much forces an answer right away, or that 4 lore is just going to rack you up and win you very, very quickly. I do like him a lot in like the hyper aggro version as the top cost character I would play in the deck at like 2 or 3 of, because then you just quest, and if you hit turn 5, you slap him down, and you're like, okay, now you have to make sure you dealt with all my little characters and with him, otherwise I'm going to win that game. I think in the slightly slower versions, I don't know if he has a place. It's not a bad card, you still could, but definitely if you're playing a faster purple steel deck, I think that Gantu should be in your deck. Shifting feels a bit slow. for a deck like this. So Robin Hood, just I don't think it's the right format for it. Format's not super aggressive, and by the time you get to Tink, like I said, getting rid of that Oswald by turn 6, I mean, by then he already did his damage. Yes, you get rid of it. Yes, it can be good. Yes, it can win you the game still, but that's a lot of cans, and overall, I think that Tinkerbell's not insane this format. I think she'll get better, though, so obviously it's a great card to hold on to. And then Wreck-It Ralph. Once again, I think Ralph is really good, but it's so slow and it's uninkable. It's a high cost uninkable card that I think the payoff isn't quite good enough for, is why I would not recommend playing Ralph. Ursula, I like her a lot in green purple just because you have that shift line to get her out sooner. Overall, I don't think she's crazy strong. I don't think she's insane, but it's an option, and if you're looking for that big boss card, she does work. Questing for 3 with 7 willpower and being able to exert an opponent's character is also really strong while slowing down them singing things. I don't dislike her as a card. I think she's more in that control version. You could play her. Same with Elsa. Elsa in the more controlled version, I'm actually okay with. But overall, it's a kind of like Wreck-It Ralph. It's a high-cost, uninkable card. I think her payoff is better, and I think she's just overall better right now. But I don't know. I don't think I would play her in many versions. Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom, that's if you're playing the Hyper Aggro version. Same with This Is My Family, gain a lore, draw a card, really good. Dealing with getting rid of your opponent's board. Strength of the Raging Fire. I think in the quicker version and in the control version, this card is insane. So why would you not play it in the in-between version? It was one of the last cards I cut out of the deck, actually. So I'd probably go like, out of all these cards in the deck, like Queen, Strength, and Bagheera would probably be the top 3 in that order that I would put back in. And the only other thing that I'd say maybe leapfrogs all that, I'm currently on Library, reluctantly. I still like Castle a ton. I still think Castle is insane. And I still stand on the point that I've never finished an event and said, Library won me this game. Library won me those matches. Because of Library, because of the advantage, because of the lore, I won. Because of the pressure Library put on my opponent, I won. I've still never said that. Being said, I have said it over and over. There's many times where I'm like, Castle won me that game. Yeah, I won that round because of Castle. I got 2 castles out, and there's nothing they could do. The one Strength, I am trying Library out again. I'm trying to give it its due diligence. I like to do that. I don't want to just stick to a card and be like, it's forever better, it's forever this, it's forever that. Because Library has, we're going to talk about Library now before the deck profile. Library has great synergy with our 1-drops, being able to get you to draw 2 cards. And it has great synergy with things like Smee, where they self-sabotage themselves and eventually they die off to be able to replace themselves and get that card. So like I said, might switch back to Castle because I am biased. I like Castle more, but I'm trying to give Library its due diligence, and I want to take it to a couple in real life events before I go back to Castle. Overall, like I said, I am a stickler. I do like my Castle, but I'm going to try Library again and go with what the mass consensus is on the better version, the better card. But if you guys are ever wondering, that's something I do around here. I usually don't care what everyone says is the best card. I usually go off what I think versus what I experience and versus my thoughts where things are headed to with the meta. Going back to when I played Yu-Gi-Oh, I was doing that. I would play card B instead of card A. Everyone's like, play card A. Card A is so much better. I'm like, I don't think so, because everyone's expecting it. They're ready for it. They have their counters for it. In this case, the counters are virtually the same, and Castle's easier to get rid of. So slightly off point, I guess. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm telling you, card B matches up better into the format. And like 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, everyone was on card B. And I'm like, I'm just saying, guys, I told you this 2 weeks ago, and no one wanted to listen to me. But now someone went and topped a big event with it, and all of a sudden, everyone wants to go be a sheep and copy that. And that's fine. Some people would rather play that way. And I personally have no issues with net decking. I think net decking is actually healthy for the game. Okay, into our deck profile. Like I said, it's really budget. We got $112.66 on this version. 12 uninkable cards, right where I like to be there too. And overall, like I said, you load up on 1-drops, come down with some aggressive 2s, and you just have a lot of cards that can still get you that instantaneous lore to put away and win a game. We got 3 Chernobyls, 4 Diablo, and 4 Broom on our 1-drops. I think that Broom and Diablo are better right now personally. Getting the body down, being able to potentially crash them and survive it, like your Broom or your Diablo. Like Broom, if you put a crab out, you can take out a Daisy and survive. Diablo, you can crab and then take out many characters and get crazy value and then also draw a card. Chernobyl can do that same thing as a Broom. However, he just, ends up dying because the 1 willpower a lot of the time. So overall, I really like the 1-drop lineup. Then our 2-drops. 4 Snake, just because there's so many great bounce targets here. Bouncing your Smee to remove the damage is something that I'll see a lot of people forget about and just not do. And I'm like, you would have won the game had you done that and then replayed your Smee, you would have won the game. But now we have Giant Cobra as well, which is just another bounce target. Bouncing your Fox to clear the damage off of it. You have Snake for next turn, and now your opponent knows you have that threat of Fox once again, is actually an underrated play I've seen. But back to Giant Cobra real quick. So when you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to gain 2 lore. You don't always have to do that. You can just play it as a 4/4 body if you would like, and that a lot of the time is still very strong. You don't have to discard to get the 2 lore. Do you want to do it? Do you have the card resource? Is it fine? Okay, cool. Go for it. But again, you don't have to do it. Remember, sometimes it's just nice to put that big threatening body out there, and your opponent has to find a way to get rid of it. If they can choose it with an action, I mean, that's the easiest way. Otherwise, they'll have to crash something into it, possibly multiple somethings. Smee and Calhoun are both pretty straightforward, I think. I don't think there's anything too crazy. Nothing has really changed with them. They're just really, really strong 2-drops in the game. Like I said, having Crab to be able to boost your 1-drop specifically and just take things out, being able to boost a Calhoun to take out just about anything in the game, also very strong. Being able to play it, say, challenge a McDuck Manor, put 3 damage on it, and then Fox bounce your Crab, and then boost your Fox to 7, and then Fox takes out the Manor, what's remaining after your Crab. Also a very strong play because blue is popular, and McDuck Manor is a card you should be ready for. We also have Tinkerbell Fast Flyer. So kind of showing you guys the rest of my character lineup, and like I said, I'm not quite hyper aggro, but I'm trying to be a faster pace deck, and I really like Tinkerbell a lot in here, especially the 3 willpower. The 3 willpower is huge because something like Let the Storm Rage On does not take her out. They need multiple cards, or they need 3 characters with Strength of the Raging Fire, or they have to throw Zeus at it. And if they're throwing Strength and Zeus at Tinkerbell, they're not throwing Strength and Zeus at Genie. So we're playing 4 Tinks, 4 Genies. They're multi-questing evasive threats that just, they can put in a lot of work. If you hit Tinkerbell Genie on 3/4 against a lot of Sapphire decks, you're going to put in a lot of work. You're going to be able to, especially if you have a third one to come back with after they Zeus your Genie or something like that, you're in an incredible spot, and your opponents really put on a how are you going to answer this kind of mentality. We have 3 Benjas for that item removal and a multi-quester. 3 Petes. I think especially in this deck, 3 Pete is plenty because you can bounce your Pete to get it back and just repeat your opponent. The 4 Genies, 2 Rabbits. Like I said, it's mostly because he's evasive and quest for 2. I think early in the format, Genie is crazy because people are sleeping on it. I do expect people to start respecting it a bit more, and depending how the format shifts, maybe I go back to like 2 or 3 Genies and 4 Rabbits. But for right now, I think that 4 Genies is the right call, at least until the respect is there and people build to take out the Genie. But then again, maybe we leave it because at the same time, remember, if they're doing that and using those cards to take out their Genie, they're not taking out your Tinkerbell. In addition, they don't have to know you're not playing the Shift Tinkerbell. A lot of people might just assume you're playing Big Tink, at least as a 2 of, then you have that shift line. Sometimes I do it. I don't think it's a bad play, but if your opponent thinks you're doing it, they might prioritize taking out that Tinkerbell as soon as they see it hit the board. They might throw that Brawl down real quick and then regret it when you come back with Genie on the following play. Our songs, I got 2 friends on the other side. We have a lot of other draw, especially with library. You got your library, you got your 11 1-drops. We got Genies, we got Rabbits. I felt like we had a lot of card draw, so I only went 2 friends on the other side, and then 3 along came Zeus. Zeus is just still crazy right now. And then we already talked about library, so I'm really not going to get into that too much. But overall, guys, let me know what you think about this deck. Like I said, I think that it's really strong, and I think that this is a tier 1 deck, and it can be catered into majority of formats. I think the majority of metas that you could play in, this deck has the toolbox. That tech pool is there. I think that this deck can absolutely compete, and it's on that budget side. I am working on another purple steel location style focused deck list that's coming in under $100. So make sure, if you guys want a really budget deck that I think can compete pretty well, you hit that notification bell so you don't miss it when we upload it. But thank you guys for watching. As always, like, share, subscribe, and take care.